Welcome back to another episode of the Todd Durkin Impact Show. And I am uber fired up today, especially excited because we have a big one for you today. We have hundreds of people joining in live. That's right, live. Because today I'm going to take you out to a very special place, Christian high school. Twice a year, I get to go out to Pastor David Jeremiah's church and school, Christian Unified Schools, and to deliver chapel to the over 1,000 kids between all ages, levels, and grades. And this one was special for several reasons. Number one is because Pastor Jeremiah asked me to sign 700 books for the students who would be in attendance at chapel on this particular day. So, my friend, I've got a sore hand as I'm recording this today from the 700 signatures, but I couldn't just give them the book. I had to make sure that they could actually see the signature and get some love in that Get Your Mind Right book. But today's message that you're going to hear about, and I wanted to take a clip from what the kids heard at chapel, because it's all about we are in a crisis of belief. We are in a crisis of belief. And when you hear this today, I had already signed all of the books. I go up to chapel and there's hundreds of kids in the church, and I share 5 points. And these are the 5 points, but I'm gonna go into depth today. Point number one is it's gonna require a turning point. Faith is gonna require a turning point. It just so happens that Dr. J's, his whole mission is, and business is called Turning Point Ministries. His ministry is called Turning Point, but I'm starting with your crisis of belief starts with a turning point. The second aspect is faith. And I'm not just talking about faith as in fortitude, attitude, integrity, trust, and humility. I'm talking about a faith in God and how sometimes your faith is often tested. As Dr. J has said to me, is everyone is broken. That's how the light gets in. Everyone's broken. That's how the light gets in. And sometimes when you're most broken is when your faith is going to be revealed the most. Number 3 I'll talk about today is God-sized dreams. You know, I love God-sized dreams, and I'm going to challenge these kiddos to make sure that they're living their God-sized dreams. God-sized dreams are those dreams that you have no idea how you're going to fulfill them. Moms or dads, grandmas, grandpas, kiddos, like you have no idea how on your own you're going to fulfill them. But that's why it's called a God-sized dream. Number 4, what you do reveals what you believe. What you do reveals what you believe. So let me ask, what are you doing? What are you doing that's big these days? What are you doing that you're stepping outside your comfort zone, outside your zone where you're just operating in maybe mediocrity? What are you believing and what are you doing? Because it's all about the doing. Because number 5 that I'm going to talk about today is true faith requires action. True faith requires action. It all comes down to action. Just because you go to church, synagogue, temple doesn't make you any more special than anybody else. It's not because you go to church. It's because you get filled up with the Spirit, and then you take action, and you go out and make this world a better place by your actions and by making people around you better so that this world could be lit up with everything from positivity, light, optimism, belief, and of course, faith. So we have a great one today. And just remember, when I can't do what I want to do, then I do what I can do. When I can't do what I want to do, I do what I can do. You've heard these quotes before over the last several months. You're going to hear them again today, and this is going to be one special chapel. Without further ado, we're going to Christian Unified Schools over there at Shadow Mountain Church. Without ado, let's go listen to We Are in a Crisis of Belief. A crisis of belief. Can y'all say crisis of belief? A crisis of belief. And as you wrestle with, man, I want to believe in God. I want to go deeper in my walk. But man, I also want to do these things over here. There's a crisis. A crisis requires a decision.
So I got 5 points. Point number 1, if you're writing notes, you're taking notes down, you can write them down. When God tells me what he wants to do through me, I'm going to face a crisis of belief. When God talks to you about, hey, you got to do this, you're going to wrestle in your head when God's calling you to do something big. Maybe you want to get a scholarship to college academically or athletically. Or you want to serve your community. You're being called to do something. You're going to face a crisis of belief. And point number 1 in that is, that requires a turning point. It requires a turning point. Like, when you commit to something, how do you go all in to commit to taking the action steps? Because when God calls you what he wants to do through you, that's when you face your crisis. That becomes your turning point. So number 1 is a turning point. Number 2, encounters with God require faith. What is faith? It's believing when you cannot see. When you can't see something, are you going to take that step? Well, I don't know if I'm going to like it at that school. I don't know if I want to open that business. I don't know all the answers. That's called faith. When I started my business 24 years ago, big leap of faith. No clients, no money, no business plan. That required faith. Even now, as I step into new chapters of what I'm doing with my life, 24 years later, requires faith. Are you going to listen and tap into God or not? Faith is confidence that what God has promised or said will come to pass. It's going to happen. That's number 2. Encounters with God require faith. Where are you being called to serve today? 3, encounters with God are God-sized. God-sized. Like, I call it God-sized dreams. Who has a God-sized dream? Raise your hand. You have a God-sized dream. Okay, about half you. So the other half, I'm going to speak to you of how do you get your dreams so big that you have no idea how they're going to come true? You don't know how they're going to come true. You just know you want to do this. You feel called eventually. Hey, I felt called when I was playing college football that somehow I was going to be an NFL quarterback. That was my God-sized dream growing up from 5 to 25. Like, hey, I'm going to be an NFL quarterback. I'm going to be an NFL quarterback. This is what I'm going to do. So I worked my tail off through high school, training and trying to do the right things and academically to go to a school that had a good education but good athletics as well. But God had a different plan for me. Little did I know when I blew out my back at age 25 in NFL Europe that would bring me down a different route. See, when you're going through the fire, you don't understand why. Hindsight, looking back, I didn't realize God was saying, hey, Todd, you're not going to be an NFL quarterback. What I'm going to have you do is work with all the NFL quarterbacks and train them physically and mentally so they can excel and go do great things. And in the last 24 years and having to work with over a dozen of the top quarterbacks in the league, I look back, I'm like, man, my plan was to be a quarterback in the NFL. God's plan was bigger. You work with these guys, and now you're going to work with 12 of these top guys so they can go do their thing. Where's your faith lie? I wrote down here, our world is not seeing God because we're not attempting anything that only God can do. Let me repeat that. Listen, our world is not seeing God because we are not attempting anything that only God can do. So you got to do things that are bigger than you. You got to put your faith in things, the God-sized dream, in, man, I don't know how I'm going to do this by myself, but if you put God in there, let God go to work and watch what happens. And number 4, what you do reveals what you believe. What you do reveals what you believe. So you can have a huge dream. I want to do this with my life. And whether it involves a career, money, action, philanthropy, you could say what you want, but ultimately you have to take an action step. So what your parents tell you or what your coaches and teachers say, ultimately you got to take the action step. And what you do reveals your belief. So the deeper you go in your belief, what you do reveals what you believe. What do you believe? What is it you believe? Because lastly, before I share my exercise, I'll share this. When you think about what you believe and what you want out of life, True faith requires action. Your faith for what you want in life requires action. Hey, if you want to get fitter, you got to work out. You want to be smarter in school, you got to study. You got to take action. And it's going to be painful sometimes, because if you get a C on your report card, you're like, man, I'm an AB student. You may have to double your study time, or you're working out, but you're not seeing the results. That might mean you got to cut out some things with your nutrition that you really don't want to. I understand what we want, we don't want, but how do you base that on what you need? So what are you willing to do? Because when you think about that step, what's it going to take? True faith requires action. Your leader, Pastor Jeremiah, is a man I tremendously admire, respect, and like you, when you study him and you watch Pastor Jeremiah do his thing, I had the opportunity to train him several days a week. And the last 6 months, I've never, ever wanted to spend more time with him and learn from him, because that guy knows how to battle through adversity, battle through challenge and strife. And while sometimes we're like, man, he had another book come out and the book is doing so well and he's impacting all these people. See, like you, I see the man that's battling deep down to overcome some of his health challenges. I see the man showing up at the gym 3 days a week. And he said something recently at the gym. He just finished a set of seated rows. And he was tired that day and he was battling. And he said something I'll never forget. He says, when I can't do what I want to do, I do what I can do. Let me repeat that. If you're taking notes, write it down. When I can't do what I want to do, I do what I can do. Well, why is that important? Because when you do what you can do, sooner or later, you're going to be doing what you want to do. When you do what you can do, you're soon going to be able to do what you want to do, because not always are you going to be able to do what you want to do. Hey, I really want to do this. What if physically you can't do it? What if your back is jacked up? What if you got a health challenge going on and you can't? Then do something that you can do, because it's going to bring you 1% further down the field. And you're just inch by inch, yard by yard, picking up first downs, and you're winning the day. How do you do that? And it might be a seated row, a push-up. It might be a squat. It might be doing the homework, because you understand, but I'm going to do today what I need to do. When I can't do what I want to do, I do what I can do. Because when you do what you can do, you're soon going to do what you want to do. Tremendous discipline. And he capped it off with this. He said, the crest of the wave determines the depth of the valley. I was like, whoa. The crest of the wave determines the depth of the valley. And I was like this. Has anyone ever been in a valley before? Raise your hand if you've ever been in a valley. Yeah, I thought so. Everybody. And if you haven't, you will someday. The crest of the wave determines the depth of the valley. That also means the depth of the valley determines the crest of the wave. That means if you're down low and you're battling through something, mom and dad are going through a tough time, finances aren't right at home, you keep going and showing up. Because if you're at a valley and you continue to persevere, what's going to happen is sooner or later, the crest of the wave is going to get high if it's low. But you got to keep going. Does that make sense? If so, say yes. If so, say yes. Good, I hear you. So keep going on that. The crest of the wave determines the depth of the valley.
Man, oh man, do I love going to Christian schools and delivering the goods. Love those kids, love the teachers, the admin, the vision that Dr. Jeremiah had several years ago to resurrect chapel and make it the cool thing on Wednesdays. And every Wednesday they have speakers from all over the country sometimes come in and speak to them to light them up. Man, so special for everyone involved, and especially the students, the middle and high school students at chapel. But three things. Number one, signing those books today was really, really special. And it was really special after chapel was over to actually shake hands, give high fives, give hugs, give fist bumps, and fire those kids up. They were so full of gratitude and smiling, and they were so excited to get their books. And I required them, they have to read at least chapter 1. That's your homework, boys and girls. Go read chapter 1, and don't forget the forward of Get Your Mind Right. So that was the homework. Number 2, It wasn't just about we are in a crisis of belief and the 5 points that I just shared on today's show. But just so you know, what I didn't share on today's episode with the kids, I actually went through my 10 forms of wealth and 3 and 30. Not necessarily like mine, but how to do it. If we can teach the kids, let alone us adults, on how to do your 10 forms of wealth and 3 and 30, go to the God Size Dreams Planner and get it if you don't, because you got to do it. You got to have the discipline to do the 10 forms of wealth and the 3 and 30 every darn month. On the first of the month, do the work. Don't just say you want to have a stronger faith or stronger belief, or you want a turning point in your life, or whatever that is. Do your 10 forms of wealth and you do your 3 and 30, the 3 goals in the next 30 days for the 10 forms of wealth, and watch how it changes. If these kids can learn those disciplines now and they're being fed some manna, watch out, world. And lastly, just a huge shout out to my man, Pastor David Jeremiah. I say it all the time. I've probably spoken more about this man than anyone else on the podcast, but I am blessed to work with him several days a week and to present at chapel. And heck, last year, in the Father's Day sermon that I had the opportunity to share, what an amazing man and congregation and community there at Shadow Mountain Church and Turning Point Ministries. You can watch Turning Point worldwide every Sunday. Look for David Jeremiah, Dr. David Jeremiah. He's on TV every Sunday morning, and he is doing his thing. It just celebrated his 83rd birthday. The man is full of vinegar and full of life, and I am so honored to be in his life. And I'll share one more quote, because I only gave you 2 in the beginning before we got kicked off, is something that I've been stuck on. Another quote is, the crest of the wave determines the depth of the valley. The crest of the wave determines the depth of the valley. When Dr. J told me that several months ago, I was like, man, that is so good. Maybe you're riding a high, maybe you're in the valley and you're riding a low. But wherever you are, whether you're the high or the lower lows, you keep going and you stay in faith and you keep going. And as Doc said, man, the devil sometimes trying to take you out of the game. Don't let him take you out of the game. You keep going, you keep fighting, punching, and doing those 5 things I talked about on today's show, because the crest of the wave determines the depth of the valley, and the depth of the valley determines the crest of the wave.